Welcome to Start with Hello, conversations about disability. And if you paid any attention to really any of our messaging in the past, you'd probably pick up that we advocate everyone being involved in disability ministry. And we believe that more involvement is what's going to lead to actual inclusion, which is ministry with, not just ministry to. I wanted to start off with this, Ryan. I think a good a good question really to begin with on the subject of this episode and in general being how to get more men involved, why it's important. Obviously, this was an intentional topic we want to discuss, but you don't really see much about, you don't see a lot of articles or podcasts about how to get women involved in disability ministry. So why the focus on men?
It's a good question, and I think we don't see anything about getting women involved in disability ministry because I think this is a rough estimate, but I'd say somewhere between 80 and 90% of the workforce in disability ministry is probably women. Obviously, without women, probably would be no disability ministry. So I feel first of all we owe a lot of gratitude towards women for really pushing this movement to where it is today. But why focus on men? Just uh, I think the flip side of that is there's just not many men involved in disability ministry, there could be a lot of different reasons for that. You know, you could just look at church attendance in general. I think one of the last statistics I saw was that only about 39% of church attendance is men. So you could say, well, there's lack of attendance, so that's why there's lack of participation from men. But I don't think that's actually a good answer. But why focus on men? We need men. Uh, Disability ministry needs men. The church needs men, and men need the church, and men need disability ministry. And I think when you have excited men involved in the church, it's an indicator and a sign of a healthy, growing church. And I think that can be the case too for disability ministry. There's so many different things that you can pull up on statistics on serving, the importance of it, and yeah, why focus on men? Just because number one, they're not there and they need to be there. Number two, it just having that balance in your disability ministry of having both men and women actively involved is such a good and healthy thing. So just when you look at practical side of things, when you've got different issues that come up that require maybe require personal care, and and you're dealing with different genders. There's some very specific reasons, and then some very general and spiritual reasons why it's important that both genders be involved.
While you were talking, it brought it. There's a quote. I don't know if it was a meme or something I saw online a while back. And I take everything personal. So when I read this, I was actually, for some reason, I was kind of upset by it. But it said if your inclusive ministry only focuses on those with disabilities, then it's not actually inclusive. And I don't know why that. I was like, wait a minute, that's not true. We're trying. And I thought, well, wait a minute, that is true. Like if you're only focusing on a single if you're only focusing on a single demographic. So I think, if you're really looking at it, my argument would be, obviously we're talking about disability ministry and getting men involved, but if you're really wanting an inclusive ministry, I think it's good to look at everything and say, okay, who's not here? Why are those people not here? Disabilities or not, like if you really want it to be truly inclusive, I think, everybody has to be involved. But one of the other questions that I had, and I think I feel like this is kind of an easy one, but I'm sure somebody out there may ask this: is do you see any special benefits to having more men involved rather than just a few?
Oh, gosh, absolutely. And I tried to back up from this question a little bit and just look at the benefits in general. of men and women and coming to Christ and involvement in the church. And I found this statistic, it was just overwhelming to me. And again, this is kind of backed up a little bit broader take on this question, but the statistic said this, that when a dad comes to Christ first, 93% of families follow. If a mom comes to Christ first, 17% of the family follows. And it like there's just an
Wow.
over
That's
yeah,
a big difference.
there's an overwhelming difference. And and again, I go back to what I said originally, like the disability ministry movement owes so much credit and gratitude to women because it wouldn't be where it is without women. But I think as you look through the Bible, the role of a man, a father, in a family, in a church, uh, there's just something to that. When men are involved, again, I think it's a sign of a healthy and growing church. And I think the same thing applies in your disability ministry. If you have men that are involved in not just filling spots, but like actually like meaningfully involved, it's a sign of a healthy ministry that's going to be a growing ministry because when you can capture men, I think at times, if you believe that statistic, you capture the whole family. So you're not going to just get the father or the man. You're going to get the rest of the family too. So I just think there's something to that, and I guess it shouldn't be surprising just because of how clear Scripture is on the role of men and fathers um, in being spiritual leaders of their family and of the church. So huge benefits to that. I mean, again, just some general statistics and different things that you can look at when it comes to the church and men. And there's a couple of these, that I'll just roll through kind of real quickly. Churchgoers are more likely to be married and express higher level of satisfaction with life. Church involvement is the most important predicator of marital stability and happiness. So, obviously, men being involved is important for the family. Church involvement moves people out of poverty. So, it's kind of crazy statistic. It's also correlated with less depression, more self esteem, greater family and marital happiness. Religious participation leads men to become more engaged husbands and fathers. Teens with religious fathers are more likely to say they enjoy spending time with their dad and they admire him. So, just having men involved in the church, period, has massive implications for the family. So I think that, in a general and broader sense, applies as well to disability ministry. If you can get men involved, it's a win for everybody, especially the family. And I really feel like there is a place for every man to serve in disability ministry. And if you can't find a place for men to serve in your disability ministry, you're probably not thinking big enough about disability ministry. So get men involved. It has a huge benefit for everyone, uh, including the participants in your ministry, your family, and your church as a whole.
I think if you're a guy and you can't find a place in disability ministry, I think you're asking the wrong people. Because I just thinking of my church, and I know that I could go to any of the staff and said, "Hey, I just want to help out." And I imagine them having this printed list. Oh, okay. Well, we have these 50 openings, and there's always there's always plenty of opportunities that the staff have in mind that volunteers might not, I should say. And there's always a great place to fit in for everybody. So I wanted to throw this out there at you. So anybody listening should know by now that we do free consulting. You can go to abilityministry.com up at the top and click on I want to and set up free consulting. So let's say that I've just done that. I've gone to Ability Ministries website, I've clicked on free consulting and I filled it out, and you're checking your email and it says, "Hey, this guy Jason Morrison, he's at a church with his disability ministry, and he has noticed the absence of men, and he's wanting to change that. so you're setting up a consultation. So what advice would you have for me? What would be the first thing that you would do to change that?
I always start by asking questions. I feel like the more information I have, the more successful I can be in helping churches. But if someone's going to come to me and say, "Hey, we're having trouble getting men involved in our ministry," I'd first start by asking, "Okay, uh, what does your ministry look like? What do you do? You know, at a programmatic level, at a level of events, you know, what is it that you're doing? What are the opportunities that are available?" And you know, most churches in their disability ministry starts in the children's ministry area. And most ministries start with things like having buddies. And if you're looking at that as like your primary need and opportunity, uh, that's not necessarily gonna be something that a lot of men are gonna say, "Yeah, that's that's where I fit best." You know, I think sometimes men are intimidated by, sometimes that one-on-one level, you know, opportunity. Not everybody, but I think a lot of men are. I think oftentimes too, men are apprehensive to get involved. I think anybody, really, it's not just a male thing, are apprehensive to get involved if they feel like they have to sign up forever. First of all, I'd look at opportunities. You know, what do you offer? And again, it's looking differently, and looking at your disability ministry with a bigger set of lens. But yeah, I'd say, hey, let's create some one-time events, some limited opportunities. Let people try things out, get creative, find opportunities for guys to get involved. And I like to think of different types of opportunities. I like to think of serving kind of outside the box. And when I say outside the box, I'm referring to Sunday morning, because you have a lot of traditional Sunday morning opportunities, and not all of them necessarily are going to be great fits for guys that might be apprehensive at getting involved. Um, but I mean, ultimately, uh, men want to do something that makes a difference, that has a purpose. They don't just want to fill a spot because you have a spot that needs filled. So think outside the box, think of some opportunities that may not even be Sunday morning opportunities. Um, Things like being a wish list champion. You know, if you've got families that have needs outside of Sunday morning, and men can you know, would be a good you know, you're looking at the men at your church, you know, maybe it's a family that needs some accessibility in their home, whether it be building a ramp at their home, like, that's something that is significant, and it makes a difference in the life of a family, and that's like a perfect project for somebody, to get involved with and helping. You know, think about things that men enjoy doing and get involved with without having to be kind of, you know, pushed to get involved in things like Habitat for Humanity, you know? There probably are families in your congregation that have significant needs or handyman type needs, yard work, repairs, you know, oil changes, different things like that. So if you come up with like a wish list from your families of things that guys enjoy doing and will find significance in, like that's like super compelling, I think, to get guys involved. And I think it requires us as ministry leaders to shift our thinking about what is a volunteer opportunity. Because so often we only think of, oh my gosh, I'm short 3 buddies this weekend. Well, 3 buddies spots that you just need to fill isn't going to be necessarily compelling, for guys. So yeah, I like to ask questions. I like to see what programming is. I like to push people to think creatively outside of the box, because I think once you give men some of these opportunities, that you allow them to make a difference in the life of families, then your next ask of them to say, "Hey, you remember this family that you helped out, you know, a couple weeks back? Their son is coming on Sunday morning and they need a buddy." Well, you now have a connection and a relationship. and they probably will be more willing to jump in and do that. But yeah, there's so many different opportunities. Again, I'll just roll through kind of a list of them. When we look kind of bigger about disability ministry, things like security, respite, volunteers, outings, chaperones, van drivers, greeters, tech helpers, small group host, not necessarily small group leader, but host, guys' night out, being a pen pal, dudes and drawing, book clubs. I mean, wings, just going out and having wings, going to movies, going to a shooting range. There's so many different things that guys love to do. And I think guys aren't involved because we're not giving them opportunity to do things that they love to do with other people that are like-minded. So, long-winded answer, but hopefully that kind of gets around to kind of what I would do if a church was saying, "Hey, we don't have guys involved. What can we do?"
I like the I like what you mentioned about having it be more intentional, more mission minded, like more purposeful rather than just filling a spot. And I never really thought about that from a personal standpoint, but our here in Louisville, Kentucky, our church does Camp Freedom, and that's a pretty big event. And it's a several night overnight camp, and it can be a lot to ask a new volunteer to say, hey, you're going to partner, you're going to be a buddy all weekend, but oh yeah, by the way, at night we need you to help this person shower and change briefs and get them dressed. You're going to have to put on a swimsuit. For guys, I think that can be really uncomfortable, especially like if that's your first time volunteering. And sure, there's some people out there willing to do that, but I like some of these other. I think they're capable. It's just that you need for some, it helps to have a little bit easier on ramp into serving, and for them to come to some of these events that you mentioned where there's not that level of uncomfortableness. You mentioned going to wings or the shooting range, those kind of things. That kind of makes it a little bit more comfortable, and then the walls kind of come down. I'm like, I don't know why I was worried about all of that. So, and I like you mentioned that there's some events and things that churches could do like out of the box, meaning not necessarily on Sunday. What other, I guess, what other examples, what other ideas did you have in mind for getting men, I guess, like that on ramp to get them more involved to make it easier for them?
I think it all starts. It all starts with the realization that we're more alike than different. I know we use that phrase quite a bit, but I think if we can get men on the same page, realizing that, uh, again, going back to the local church example, if I'm working with a church on a consultation, one of the things that I'm going to ask is, what does your men's ministry do? What are the events that your men's ministry does regularly that people really love? And whether it is, camping, or whether it is going to a range, or whether it is, going and getting wings, some of the stereotypical things that guys love to do, whether it's a sports night, whether it's, a Super Bowl watch party, whatever that is, that was is within the DNA of the church that the men's ministry is already doing. These are the opportunities where you need to start plugging people in, inviting people with disabilities to be a part of that, having that shared experience outside of Sunday morning where the walls kind of come down and you don't have, that Sunday pressure of Sunday morning. And I think when people are able to share that same space together, they realize that they're more alike than different, that they enjoy doing the same things. And then I think one of the things that I've experienced, I know you've experienced it too, is um, whether you're neurotypical walking into a space with a bunch of, adults with intellectual developmental disabilities, you come in with fears and apprehensions, but within like 2 minutes, all those fears are gone because you're welcomed and loved. unconditionally by our friends with disabilities. And so I just think having that shared experience, whatever it is within the DNA of your church, specifically your men's ministry, um, is just super important. It's just a one time event that you can do that allows for that shared space. It's just I think it's the catalyst for everything when it comes to deeper involvement for men in your ministries.
We did a event at one of our campuses, and it was, to me, it was probably one of the most unique that we had ever done. And I don't know if anybody else listening could ever pull this off, because I it was a Nerf gun war night. And when they told me they had enough equipment, I thought, I don't know, how many people are probably going to show up. And apparently, one of the staff members there, volunteers, he has the largest Nerf gun collection I have ever seen in my life. There was enough for everybody, and they literally turned most of the front lobby into like a war zone. They had inflatable obstacles, and it was so fun. And we had no idea how that was going to go, and it kind of cracked me up. Like, there was zero mercy. One of our one of our wheelchair users found himself kind of in the middle, and they were lighting him up. They were aiming for his head, and I ran out there with a shield, and I was like, bro, they are not going to go easy on you. You need some help. Um, but that was so fun, and it got some guys involved that, they might not first sign up to come to camp and change somebody's briefs or swimming suit or pajamas or whatever, but showing up and be like, hey, all we need you to do is hand out Nerf guns, or pick up the Nerf bullets or whatever. That's a little easier for them. And it also made the barrier to entry lower for a lot of our folks that hadn't come to one of our guys' nights. They might not want to come bowling. They might not like, drawing or some of the other activities, but Nerf, seemed pretty fun. So it was a pretty good turnout. But having all of those guys together, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were mentioning consultation. This popped up. Didn't you have a consultation with a church, and they have a disability ministry, but I think it's pretty unique. Wasn't it only run by men? And if I'm not speaking out of turn or out of line here, can you explain a little bit more about that? Because I think if that's true, that's pretty rare.
It's so rare that I almost fell out of my chair when I was on this consultation with this church. It was almost exactly a year ago today that I had this consult. Small mobile church in North Carolina, and I'm going through the typical questions that I go through, just trying to get familiar with the church as they requested help, and I'm just trying to get to know them. So I asked them how they were doing, staffing volunteers, because that's always one of the biggest issues for disability ministry is, having enough volunteers for your programming and different things that you do. And knowing that they were a mobile 1 hour church, um, whether it's disability ministry, children's ministry, youth ministry, working ministry, it doesn't matter. If you're a mobile 1 hour church, it's really hard to get people to volunteer routinely to give up that, if it's 1 hour is one option, you don't get to go to service if you're volunteering. And and the ladies were like, "Oh, I'm fine." I'm like, "What do you mean you're fine when it comes to your volunteer staff?" She said, "No, I'm fully staffed with volunteers." I was like, "Well, explain that. Let me know like how that came to be for you at your church." And she said, "Well, we made the need known, and one man stepped up and decided to take it upon himself to invite all of his friends to volunteer with him. And their entire buddy team is staffed by men, no women, and no teens, nobody else. 100% staffed by men. And the guy that stepped up to do this wasn't even a special needs dad. He saw the need and knew this was a significant opportunity and just called all his friends and invited them to to participate. So like there's like 8 of his friends that are the buddy team for this church, and it's just like that's phenomenal. And again, I think it comes back to um, men don't just want to fill a spot; they want to make a difference. And when an opportunity is made known to guys, guys step up because they want to do something significant. They want their life to count for more than just filling a need or filling a spot on a Sunday. They want to make a difference. And for this guy, this was his opportunity to make a difference. And he just invited his friends. And they fully staff this mobile church's disability ministry volunteer needs.
So it sounds like we should put his cell phone number out there and say, if you have any, if you have any questions, but
Yeah,
how,
like I said, man, if you could figure out how to bottle that, you would be the keynote speaker of every disability ministry conference. You would have a book deal, all of that, because that's such a huge thing.
I can imagine how awesome and how much fun those guys have and the ownership. Cause and it's hard sometimes to not let your ego get wrapped up in it, but I just think that would be so much fun to be a part of and just to smile when somebody says, "Oh, y'all got a disability ministry," and then just grin. Oh, let me tell you about our disability ministry and how this is done. Cause there's a lot of churches that they do nothing at all to reach the disability community, much less have, an all male volunteer run. So it's possible. And I think you're right. I think you connect with the right people, you get, tap into that mission mind, and that's there's going to be tons of fruit seen from that, and hopefully other people kind of in the area will pick up on that and use that as inspiration and maybe do something similar. um One of the other things that I had in mind to ask you, and I'm sure this probably comes up in consultations as well, I think church leadership is a question that pops up a lot. Like, hey, I want to do this. Maybe leadership's on board. Maybe they're not. How can I make sure? How can I encourage or not force? How can church leadership support and encourage men as they work and volunteer in these disability ministries?
I think one of the most effective things that church leadership can do, and I'm thinking beyond just the disability ministry leader, whether it's a volunteer or staff member, I'm thinking of executive staff, I'm thinking of lead staff. One of the most effective things that you can do as church leadership to walk around and personally thank people that are volunteering. Um, I don't see it very often. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, man, that's a huge boost to anybody that volunteers. Especially guys. To have oh, someone in leadership. Stopping what they're doing on a Sunday morning, their busiest time of the week, and just saying, "Hey, thank you for being here." So just showing up, I think is huge for leadership to walk around, show up, and say thank you. I think another thing that goes a long way is praise from the stage. Obviously, we don't volunteer because that's something that we are seeking, right? Um, but it does offer a whole lot of encouragement for people who are volunteering because if the lead person um, saying it from the stage and saying it like it puts something up on such a level of importance that you're like, wow, I want to get involved in that. So that's super helpful, and kind of beyond any of those things, just helping people to see the impact that they're having, whether it's volunteering on a Sunday morning or outside the box of Sunday morning. If you can see the real world life change that they're having on an individual or a family, man, that's the only fuel that people typically need to keep going and to inspire them to keep pushing forward and getting more deeply involved is seeing that life change or that impact that they're having on an individual or a family.
Lots of good questions and answers. And this is certainly not a new topic for us. And it's something that we're just going to continue to bring up over and over and over again until it's no longer an issue. We got a lot of work to do, but hearing stories like what you mentioned about the men stepping up, we're just encouraged by all of the churches that we've seen that are doing this, because there's a lot of churches that do have men that get involved, and it's great to see it. And if you've made it this far and you still have specific questions, we mentioned this earlier, we do free consulting. I should say not we, Ryan. Ryan does free consulting. So if you visit our website, abilityministry.com, in the top right, if you select I want to, and then select get free consulting, you can set up a time to chat, and Ryan will meet you where you are and figure out your goals and how to help achieve those. Ryan will also give you lots of money to hire staff.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I'll give you his personal cell phone at the end of this. No, seriously. And if potty talk is your thing, then you'll have to stay tuned for the next episode, because that's going to be right up your alley, because we're going to talk about Ryan's book, The Tale of the Shrinking Toilets. And this is a book about what you might think. So a book about shrinking toilets probably should be enough to capture just about anyone's attention. But the story about how the book came to be, who put it together, and the mission of the book is something worth tuning in for. So we want to dive pretty deep into that and make sure that everybody's aware of it. So look out for that next month, and we will talk to you next time. On February 2nd, 22 Day, as it would become known, something unthinkable happened. All of the toilets in public restrooms everywhere mysteriously shrank to miniature size. Tale of the Shrinking Toilets documents the worldwide mass chaos that ensued. Written by Ryan Wolf and illustrated by Adam Bryant, The Tale of the Shrinking Toilets book reveals the devastating consequences of an inaccessible world and spins a powerful allegory, revealing a hidden epidemic, inviting readers to be change agents. Learn more and get involved by visiting shrinkingtoilets.com.